Have you ever walked into the gym with a real signal of intent, ready to attack your workout, to realize the gym is so busy you can't get on any of the equipment that you want to get on? I've been there and it's a bit of a nightmare if you don't have a backup plan. Well, today we're going to take you through an upper body blast with minimal equipment. I will be doing this at the home gym and it does have a barbell, but if you don't have access to a barbell or someone is taking it in a busy gym, you can use kettlebells or dumbbells as backup options. This upper body workout is an intermediate to advanced workout. As you can see, there's quite a lot of exercises on the program. If you're a little bit earlier on in your journey, feel free to manipulate volume and loading, or even take out the D&E series depending on where you're at. Because it's an upper body blast, we're just going to focus on an upper body warm-up to mobilize around thoracic spine. I'm sure you're like me, you spend a lot of the day sitting down in this rounded position, so we've got to show some love to the thoracic spine before we start pushing and pulling. And leading into the A series, 2 exercises to target the posterior shoulder. So we've got the reverse fly followed by a banded pull apart to again counteract the postures we find ourselves in on a daily basis. To build stability and strength around that posterior shoulder is really important in the warm-up. We then move into the B series, which is still a continuation of the warm-up. We're now getting a little bit more advanced. We're going with a Renegade Row, which is a core integrated pulling exercise, and where you're doing alternate arm. The goal is to keep the pelvis nice and stable. We don't want to, when we pull one arm up, to start losing the pelvic stability and then bleeding energy through the core. So you're getting a really good bang for your buck through your core there, as well as, of course, firing up the pulling muscles. We then have a push-up with a transverse rotation. Again, I'll show you these shortly, and that's just to get you moving out of the sagittal plane and to fire up the pushing pattern, as well as, again, incorporating the core. So now we're ready for action. I'm sure you'd agree. We're fired up, we're mobile, we've done the posterior shoulder work, we've targeted the push and pull and a low end with the Renegade Row and push-up, and now we're ready for the main component, the C series, barbell floor press, followed by barbell bent over row. So if you do have access, you manage to get into a busy gym to one barbell and you can dominate and not let anyone have that, you can literally do a push followed by a pull, and it's a really easy setup. So again, the considerations around this program are for minimal equipment, but also in a busy gym. So if you can get that bar, we might as well use a push and a pull on that same piece of kit. We then move into the D series, incline dumbbell press, incline dumbbell fly, and then a push up to failure. So this is pretty full on for the pushing pattern. And some might say, well, you're contradicting yourself, Dan. You said you're in this forward head posture, but that's why now you can see we showed some love to the posterior shoulder to strengthen around the scapula, because in this series here, it's still an upper body blast. We still want to overload the upper body. So we're just going to do a tricep here for the pushing pattern. And again, if you're not advanced or intermediate to advanced, you might take out the D3s, the push up till failure. So you've got incline press, incline fly, taking care not to go too deep if you have got shoulder problems, and then you can overload it with a push up to failure. You might not even need the D3 series if you do a couple of sets here, if you're getting your loading right on D1 and D2. We then move into the E series, so now we're going underhand row. We're going to use the same barbell we use for C2. So now we're going to go with a supinated underhand grip to increase bicep recruitment, and then we're going to go into our dumbbell curls and lying tricep extension to overload the arms, a nice bit of arm farm to finish, and that is the workout. Again, volume and loading is individual dependent. Right, enough of me talking, let's go and do the workout. Kicking things off with a warm-up, and this doesn't need to be a long, arduous warm-up. 3 to 5 minutes will be sufficient to mobilize the thoracic spine in both extension and rotation. I don't have access to a foam roller today, so I'm going to show you how to do it without a foam roller, but we'll get the job done. So starting in the cat-camel position, knees in line with hips, hands stacked below shoulders, and we're simply going to come up rounded, deep breath in into flexion, and then extend and exhale. We're just trying to get some range in the back now, get that spine moving. And there's no definitive rep range here, guys. Just do whatever feels right. I tend to work around 8 to 10, but whatever's right for you. And then because I don't have access to a roller, another great way to mobilize the T-spine extension is just coming down like so. We're not taking things overhead today in the workout, but this can really help with overhead positioning if you've got any shoulder work or vertical pressing. And then get some rotation in as well. And then to add to the rotation, hand behind the head, feed it through, and then open up and rotate. If I did have a roller, I'd block myself off here so I don't get any range through the lower body. So we get this dissociation between lower and upper extremities. So we're trying to really get some range here in the T-spine. But again, you can just block yourself off against a bench or whatever you've got available. The main focus is though, when we rotate, we don't want that knee flaring out. Try and keep it as fixed as possible, so all the range is occurring in the T-spine. If you'd like to add to that, phase 2. And again, we're just getting everything moving now. If you're training in the morning, likely you haven't put yourself in these positions. So it's just getting moving and grooving before we add load. Again, let's work with what we've got. So we want to get some range in the T-spine. No access to a roller, just come down like so. You can feed across the body as well. And that should really be enough to get the T-spine moving. And now we're ready for the A series. So moving into the A series, we've got reverse flies to kick things off. You can put your head on a bench just to ensure the spine isn't moving too much, and just opening up like so. So again, really targeting the posterior shoulder as the focus now. We're not coming out into a lateral raise. Think about pulling back and squeezing your scapula together. The shoulder blades come together there and then back down. Notice the way the thumb is in and then finishing position, the thumb actually comes up to the sky. So we're opening up the dumbbells. And in terms of reps, we tend to go quite high here. I wouldn't normally pair this with another exercise for the same area, but because we're doing that, we'll just go 12 repetitions of each, and that should do the job to really overload the posterior shoulder. And then into banded pull aparts. You can either do this standing or in the half kneel position, and similar concept, thumbs in and then finish palm open. And at first it might not seem like it's doing a lot, but you pair these back to back in a controlled manner for high volume. So this would be 24 total reps, 12 and 12. It really does start kicking in. With this one though, guys, we don't want to go too thick with the band and the upper traps then start taking over. Think about just pulling back, keeping the shoulder blades down and not hiking up with the upper traps. One set might be enough for you, or if you want to show a little bit more love, you can go with 2 sets of that before we move into the B series. The B series is a Renegade Row with a push-up and transverse rotation. We're starting to intensify things and get us ready for the big push and pulling patterns in the C series. Quite limited for space, but we're going to make it work. I'm going to use a couple of kettlebells. If you do use kettlebells, just be mindful. They are quite unstable. I'd rather be using dumbbells, but we haven't really got the selection that we need here. So I'm going to go with 2 16 kilo kettlebells, probably a little bit heavier than what I'd want because it's still the warm up, but let's make it happen. So from here, we can go bear crawl position, or you can go long lever if you've got the space, and it's come up and down, come up and down. And the key here, guys, is to not shift the hips. A cue I give to my athletes: imagine I'm balancing a glass of milk on the base of the spine. Do not let that fall off. And that way we're maintaining pelvic stability, and we're actually getting a really effective core workout from this, as well as, of course, firing up the pulling pattern and getting us ready for the main component. In terms of reps, we're looking at 8 and 8, so 16 total. And now we can move into the push-up and transverse rotation. So from here, legs nice and long, core tight. We can come down, up, and then rotate like so. The goal here is to not overcook things or drop down with the hips. We want to really get the core involved as much as possible as well. As you can see, I'm struggling a little bit for space, so if that's the case, we can change things up. We can go push up, shoulder tap plank. Remember, the goal here, guys, is just to get everything fired up and ready for the main component. Similar to the Renegade Row, if you are opting for the push-up and shoulder tap plank, we don't want too much shift at the hips when the hand comes up off the floor. And that way we're really targeting that midline and strengthening the core, as well as firing up the push and pulling patterns. Right, now we've got our big two. So we're gonna go barbell floor press, followed by barbell bent over row. I'll be honest, the floor press, we'll see how this one goes in terms of getting in the position. Let's give it a go and work with what we've got. Slightly unorthodox, be careful of your shoulder when you're lifting this initially. Ideally, we block this up onto a couple of steps, but again, let's just work with what we got here. So from here, feet flat on the floor, push the tailbone into the floor, and then drive up. So in this position here, we're now set up, elbows on the floor, feet flat, tailbone tucked in. We come up with the press with intent, and then come back down under control. I'm not working maximally here, so I'm actually gonna go quite high reps and really manipulate tempo. Pausing in the bottom position here to dissipate the use of the stretch shortening cycle, the spring-like mechanism or elastic energy, to make things a little bit harder and improve starting strength. Still good enough load, providing we can manipulate tempo and get enough volume in. I'm a big fan of the floor press as well. If you do have any shoulder issues, a dumbbell floor press is a great one we've done with the boxes in the past to enable us to get that horizontal pushing pattern, but without putting their shoulder in a precarious position. One more. Moving from the barbell floor press into the barbell bent over row. The key here is to, one, ensure that we're central to the bar, and two, to cut the trainers off through the middle of the trainer. So we're not too far away and you see people reaching for the bar in a suboptimal spinal position. We come close to the bar, hands roughly shoulder width apart or slightly wider, and then get under the bar, nice neutral spine, stay tight through the lats, push into the floor. Then we come up to start position. From here, flex at the knee, hinge over, and as you can see, a nice neutral spine from head to back side, and then pulling back and into the belly button. Emphasis on the words back and in as opposed to up. It's not an upright row. We're really trying to target the lats now, squeezing into the belly button. Nice controlled eccentric tempo again. We're not going crazy heavy with the load. Squeeze and then control. Squeeze and then control. As soon as you feel like you can't maintain that neutral spine, just pop the weight down. Again, looking for anywhere around 8 to 12 reps, depending on the load you have available to you. And that's enough for me. When we finish, pop the weight down and stand up. I managed to get 3 sets done of the barbell floor press followed by barbell bent over row superset, and I'm now going to move into incline dumbbell press, incline fly, and push up to failure. I'm quite limited with the weights we've got, so I've got 30s for the press on a bit of a dodgy bench. This may end up on a bloopers video. Let's see how we get on. So getting the weights up onto the thighs, laying back onto the bench, and then pressing up with intent and coming back down under control. Let's see if I can get 8 out on here. There's 3, 4, nice control, and then open up and rotate. 5, 6, 7. Okay, we've got last one, and then finish. We go straight from the press into the fly. Again, the weight's probably a little bit too heavy as to what I'd normally do, but let's give it a go and you'll get an idea for the exercise. So laying back, drive up with the weights, and we're coming out into a fly position. I'm not gonna go quite as deep as I normally would, just because it's probably 5 kilos heavier than what I normally use. But again, working with what we've got. Then we go straight from the fly into the push-up, no recovery at all. Let's see what we got left. So this is working until failure. Come down under control, and then fire up. Remember, the push-up is more than just an upper body exercise. Feet together, glutes on, core tight. Let's get that whole body working as one. Really manipulating eccentric tempo. And then drive up, we're getting close. One more. And you could regress this further, either hands elevated on a bench, or, and I'm not a huge fan of these, but for this principle, and purpose, they actually work pretty well. You could finish with a kneeling push-up. And we quite literally want you face planting on the floor on the last rep to show that you've hit a 0 RIR, reps in reserve. So you've basically worked until failure. And doing that as a tri-set is really important. So minimal, if any, recovery other than the transition from the incline press into the incline fly and then into the push-up, which again, you can regress to a kneeling push-up if needed at the end. So ensure that you have all of the weights ready and you're not faffing around trying to get the weights. Have them there and go and attack. If you made it this far, I salute you. We're now about to attack the final series, the E series. We're going to go with an underhand row, so different to before where we were overhand. We're now going to go with a supinated underhand grip, which is going to increase bicep recruitment before we then go into our isolated exercises. The isolated exercises will be dumbbell curls, followed by lying tricep extension. I feel like a broken record saying I'm limited with the weights here, but I don't have the weights that I'd normally use for curls, so I'm going to do a bit of a workaround. Again, if you're limited in the gym with equipment, maybe you can try some of these exercises or find other exercises that elicit the same adaptation. We'll come to that in a second. Let's start with the underhand row. Similar to before, cutting the laces of the trainers, getting underhand this time with a slightly narrower grip, lifting up to the start position as ever, and then flexing at the knee and hinging over at the hip. Pulling into the belly button, we know the line of pull now. We're not hiking into the sternum, backing into the belly button. And as we spoke about, due to the underhand nature of the grip, we're increasing bicep recruitment before we move into the isolated exercise. And the goal with these three exercises, guys, is to minimize any recovery period between the three to drive metabolic stress and really chase the pump now. I'll give it a go with the 16s. We'll maybe get a couple out here. Oh, terrible techers. Really trying to control that eccentric. I'll go 2 more. Last one. Now we'll move into the next ones are the 5s. I know they look heavier, but not really doing a lot. So we're just gonna have to go really high volume here just to really drive that metabolic stress. In an ideal world, I could use that bar, but it just becomes a bit faffy then putting the weights on and off. We're training with minimal equipment and limited time. Let's just do whatever we can to get it done. It's actually starting to kick in. And you can play around with the grip here. I've gone supinated grip. You can go hammers if you so wish. You can even try, maybe don't drop the weights, some preacher curl variations there as well. And then finally, the lying tricep extension. A great exercise to really work the long lateral head of the tricep. So just coming down into the ears and then extend up. And the goal here, guys, is to not allow the elbows to veer out. The second goal, don't drop the dumbbells on your head. So drive up, extend, and then come down under control. And already, even under low load, because of the session we've had, it's actually starting to kick in. Rep range for me, it'll be anywhere between sort of 15 and 20 repetitions of these just because of the limited load. But generally speaking, anywhere between 12 and 20 for you guys should work pretty well to really drive that metabolic stress and chase the pump. That's the workout completed, guys. Thanks for joining me. I hope you had a good session. I certainly got the job done. With minimal equipment, limited time, but proper programming, you can have a really good workout and drive that physiological adaptation. Like, subscribe, comment, and let me know how you got on. Cheers, guys.